So I'll let Satyajit, if you could start with a quick round of intro.
So, hi guys, great to be here. My name is Satyajeet, and I'm founder of Deciml. Deciml is a micro investing platform. We've incorporated back in 2020. We've been operational for over 7 months. But yeah, that's the brief introduction about me.
Yeah, hi. This is Saurabh, and as he just pointed out, that I'm the co-founder of Meet7. It's a dating app, and during the discussion, we'll talk about the challenges, and also I'll talk about more with the point of view of Meet7, the kind of things we're doing.
Guys, I handle the sales new business piece for AppsFlyer, and thank you everyone for joining.
Okay, amazing. So let's dive deep into the conversation. Starting with the macros today, right, which are a little tricky everywhere. The scenario is a little challenging, and there are talks about funding winter and things like that. So starting with you, probably Satyajit, if you could give us an idea as to what's impacting you guys and how are you guys trying to navigate all of this, or you guys are fairly shielded with all of these things which are happening globally or externally.
No, I think the impact is very evident. What has happened on a larger scale is uh, the definition of what are the important metrics have really changed. So where initially even download numbers or registered users, where the story could be that we have the phone numbers and email addresses of so many number of users. So there's always that potential to cross sell and upsell at a later stage. All of those, I think there's a very clear understanding that these are probably vanity metrics, and the conversations are moving more to bottom of the funnel. Who are your transacting users, who are the users that are actually your paying users. So I think that's the change that we're seeing on a larger scale, where it impacts us. Not a lot has changed, honestly, for us at Deciml, because we were not at the stage where we had to acquire customers at at any cost, right? We were in the stage of defining who our core and champion users are. So in that, I think we were very selective in our acquisition strategy. We were very experimental, but these experiments were mainly low fidelity experiments where not a lot of marketing budgets were allocated to every experiment. So from that, because we wanted to actually even understand what the utility of our product is, in the long term, we were more focused on bottom of the funnel activity. We were focused on who our acquired users are, what is the retention rate, what are these retained users, and what is the long term value that we can actually derive from these users, and conversely also what is the long term value that the users derive from the product. So I think we were in those very initial stages of defining that product roadmap, understanding our core users. So from that perspective, not a lot has changed for us, but definitely for larger companies where at one point it had come to growth at any cost. I think that's been curtailed to a large extent.
Interesting. And Saurabh, in your case, is this same being at early stage, or you've seen different impact in your case?
Is it audible? Yeah. Yeah, I think I largely agree with what you're saying. Uh, According to me, funding has not dried up. People have just stopped throwing money. So earlier बस 3 लोग गए आईआईटी से हैं कोई प्रोडक्ट बनाने वाले हैं तो मिल जाता था. And that has just dried up. That's nothing else. And as he was just pointing out, ki number of users, if you're having so many number of users, no matter how you're getting and all, so you were getting funding. So that has gone away now. Instead, you need to get to the bottom of the funnel now. How exactly the transactions are happening, how the number of users are getting to the transaction level, what is the drop at every stage. So people are looking into these details, which is right. And for us, especially at the early stage startups, if we are focusing more on these things in the beginning, I think at the later stage it's going to help us a lot, rather than being at a stage where Flipkart even today is also reporting the loss. So those are the things I think it's moving in a good direction, right direction. India particularly, I think we as Nitya was pointing out, it's a startup boom. in last 5 to 6 years, especially. But post 2015, I think a lot of startups have come. थोड़ा सा पागलपन सा भी था, कहीं भी कोई भी कुछ भी कर रहा है types. So yes, that was true for investors too. कि इन्वेस्ट तो करना ही है, यहाँ पे मार्केट है, सच अ बिग मार्केट, कुछ भी करो बिकेगा, कुछ भी करो ग्रो करेगा. सो ऑब्वियसली दे वर डूइंग. सो नाउ आफ्टर सम ऑफ द हिट्स दे हैव गॉट, or after some of the wrongs they have got, so now they're becoming more intelligent, I believe, nothing else. So I don't see much of the challenge as such.
So basically, there's like method to the madness now, and then back to the basics, which is what both of you guys are echoing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to sort of with you maybe move on to the next conversation, which is around the things like the CACs are increasing day by day or every few months. The marketing budgets are also being relooked, and then now in these scenarios, how do you maintain say the growth velocity or momentum, and how do you then drive acquisition as well? What channels do you then look at? Possibly, if you could give some perspective on those.
Yeah, I mean, directly summarizing everything in a way, okay, CAC is increasing is not the right way to put. I would say initially we feel that, and I think largely it happens because we lack innovation in marketing. We try to go the same way as everybody is going, and वो भीड़ में छुप जाते हैं in a way. So we are not identified enough. People don't look at it as, okay, you are having something extra, something different, something more valuable. So I think the product is valuable, and if you are able to communicate well, so CAC doesn't matter after that. So and another thing is, I think, uh, obviously, I mean, when you go into the marketing deeper and deeper, you realize, okay, somebody has done this or that or that. So yesterday only I was seeing some video from Gas, person on LinkedIn. So the way he has used Instagram is like he created uh, some college specific uh, accounts. So for example, in case of Meet7 underscore VIT. So this account is created, and now he started following people who are having VIT in their name, account name, and more people started following them back. He created a private account. Nobody was aware what is this. So people were just sending a request to follow it. After 3 days or 4 days, or whenever the time he has decided to announce, okay, now I'm opening it up. So that there were almost 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. So at one time he just accepted all the requests. So everybody's, and obviously he's researched it enough that what is the right time when most of the people will be all together. So that at the same time everybody got the request accepted, and they were all talking about that particular brand now. And the messaging was given, okay, this is how you can do, this is the way Gas works. So it was easy to acquire, almost zero investment. So I think we need to be more and more innovative as far as marketing goes as well. And anything which is lacking innovation cannot grow, as simple as that.
All right. So you're saying innovation and looking at new channels and mediums is what you should go about, especially in early stage.
At any stage.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of legacy or traditional brands and companies who've been made by creating innovation, the traditional FMCG, right? We've created the era and all marketing, which is somewhere missed out in this a lot of capital coming in. And Siva, in your case, while talking to a lot of customers and people in the ecosystem, how do you see people looking at the marketing budgets, acquisition, the growth velocity, etc.? If you could throw some light from your experience.
I'll probably start with the silver lining. I think there are no two ways about it. The startup ecosystem has to grow and it will grow. If you look at the way the growth pockets are opening up, I think I've been talking to a lot of them, and everybody started telling tier two is one of easy. I'll not say easy, but something where it would grow. And this is exactly what we have also seen last year. Close to 75% of total people probably installing were not from the top 10 cities. They were all from tier 2. So there is a immense amount of potential that is out there, and that's what startups are also capitalizing on. But our conversations towards the startups or the metrics, I think I would agree with him. The metrics that they've been looking at have completely changed. It's more CAC, ROI driven right now. I'll give you an example of a customer where we used to speak. They were like, हम पहले 7 दिन में कितने sign up आए वो देख रहे थे. Now their metric is completely changed. People, the success metric is completely changed. Now it's like we want to look at what is my D3 revenue per user per channel. So this is what is actually kind of helping them to decide what do they want to do next with that particular channel and how are they going to optimize. At the same time, startups are not shying away from experimenting. I think this is a very good thing about startups that you know what, even though you have certain growth metrics, you're always open to experiment with a safety net. I think that is still not gone away. And we've again a customer that we were also talking to and working with. Again, a fintech customer where they were into loan lending specifically, and they started seeing that the metros were starting to kind of plateau their growth, and they started looking at tier two again, very similar, and they understood that there is market, but there has to be certain tweaks that has to be done to make sure that this market works, and they started testing with these markets, and in time they started understanding that the right product fit could actually give them the scale that they're not getting right now in metros, and in time they were actually able to kind of crack this market. With this they're actually able to do three major things. One, because of the product fit that they were able to tweak, the retention rate of users started increasing. And the moment the user is sticking back to your platform, your LTV starts increasing because the user is coming back to do the same transaction that is required. And once you have both of these elements with you, you will start consolidating your market position in a particular place. And if you're actually able to do this for a particular market in advance, for example, a particular tier two pocket that you could identify, you actually kind of consolidate before your competition can come. So this is how we're actually seeing the startups changing the definition of success that they had and looking at new pockets of growth, which are actually pivotal engines for them.
Yeah, fairly insightful. Thanks, Siva. And from your perspective, Satyajit, on this topic and specifically, I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience would have seen the recent influencer campaigns from Deciml. If not, then definitely you guys should check those out. Pretty cool stuff. And so if you could talk a little bit about that as well, how did that happen, and what was the impact or growth after that?
So I think one is I'll address the initial question. Yes, CACs are increasing. Marketing budgets are being realigned, and in all of that, at least from early stage perspective, what I think is very important is identification of channels at the onset of the strategy, where you need to have channels which are very flexible. Say for us, our primary channel is Instagram, where I could run low fidelity experiments on certain creatives, certain tonality of voice, certain user base segmentation with as low as I could just put about 5,000 rupees, right? And see what the quick impact is, whether there is merit to even go ahead and put more money. Vis-a-vis, if I want to undertake an offline channel where I want to go down and probably do a college activation program, I think the base entry for that only might be about 50,000 or higher, right? And then to understand that this probably does not work is going to be more challenging. So for early stage companies, I think the identification of channels is very important. Uh, you need to have flexible channels which you can scale up and down, and that is something that will, because your marketing budgets you might set that at the quarter, but that through the quarter also might change. So in those terms you need to have that level of flexibility. So I think that's very important. And then the identification of users. If you again go behind user acquisition at all costs, then your CACs will always keep astronomically rising. But if you want to identify and get down to the core basics and say, look, this is what my ICP is, and this is my lookalikes that I want, right? And even if this comes at a slightly higher cost, but the LTV and the retention from this is going to be higher, then in the short term, while that might pinch more or the numbers might not look that attractive, I think one needs to take a long term view and look at it from that scale. Now, coming back to the campaign that we did, I think we were uniquely placed because of these guys actually being investors in the company. We were uniquely placed to take a bet that big. right? But I'll share a very good insight from this, right? So for someone like me who does not come from a core marketing background, when we were planning this campaign, for me, I wanted everything from this campaign. I wanted brand awareness also. I want retained users also. I want everything, right? But one thing that Ronak, who heads marketing for us, said, and which really resonated with me, is he said, "Don't look at this like your last campaign, right? Look at this as your first campaign." So I think before you take guerrilla marketing campaigns, influencer marketing campaigns, any of these things which are a little offbeat, I think the clear identification of what the objective of that campaign is has to be very clear, right? For us, this was a brand awareness campaign. The fact that I could come into a room of people I've not met, but a lot of people have actually seen the campaign. That's brand awareness. You guys probably aren't using the app yet, right? So if but you want everything from it, I think in marketing, one thing that's very important is reputation becomes very important to drive bottom of the funnel activity, which is why again that flexibility from a marketing budget standpoint and for you to very clearly identify what your channels are going to be, uh, and again for a company not just like ours but any company, just because you can doesn't mean you have to, right? Yes, we can go out and do on ground activities also. We can go out and also if we're doing it on Instagram, why can't we just run the same ads on Twitter? Why can't we just run the same ads on multiple other platforms? We can start Discord and start building a community. I think these are things that one needs to approach from a strategic way of looking at this in a stepwise manner. So once you're able to control all of this noise and identify that okay, Instagram for me is my primary channel and this is how I'm going to go about it, I think the CACs can also be controlled.
Okay, that's super interesting. And while we are chatting about the topic of growth, the conversations are also moving towards driving sustainable growth. So, from that perspective, Saurabh, if you could add your insights in terms of how do you start looking at or start driving sustainable growth, and over there, does something like retention, engagement, all of these play a part, or there's another path to getting towards sustainable growth?
Yeah, same like as Satyajit was pointing out, identifying the right. Better? Okay. So as he was pointing out, identifying the right channels, getting the right strategy. So I think in our case particularly, we are just like 80,000 users old. So too difficult to say with whole confidence, okay, this will work or this will not work. But it's all about experiments. For our case particularly, like offline worked very well. So and we believe more in offline because over there in Instagram or online cases. So we have the exposure is limited. So for example, we can only view that. We can make sure okay, people are viewing it. Impression is enough or installations are enough. The next step is always doubtful, and as we go deeper down the funnel, it becomes more and more expensive. Then it's difficult to identify okay, this is the right way to go. Sometimes Instagram works well, sometimes YouTube works very well. And when we go offline on the other hand, so it's so having an offline event, having an offline, though I agree with Satyajit's point that it's a ticket there is like 50,000 or 5 lakhs or 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. But even in online case, by the time we end up learning something, we end up spending 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs. We don't learn in 5,000 or 10,000. So initially things we can get few things, but that's like okay, then a marketing person will come, नहीं नहीं ये तो अभी इससे क्या पता चलता है, तो ये तो ऑफ है, ये आउटलायर है, ये कुछ नहीं है, अभी आज करनी है, अभी 15 दिन और रन करने दो, 15 दिन 10,000, I'm done. So that's the problem. On the other hand, when I go offline and I talk to 100 people and know their opinion, so I get some idea like what to do online then. So it's a combination of online and offline. Acquisition sustainably, we can do obviously. At the end, we'll have to go online, but the learning will come from the offline case as well. Sometimes influencer helps, sometimes a good face helps. because recall value of the brand, recall value of our product, some features is like much higher. So we did a recent campaign with Amul Parashar and Sayani. So it helped, as he was saying, that a lot of people got to know about it. So did not download the app, but at least they were knowing something like Meet 7 is there. So something like some of the features that we were unique with, they got to know about it. So maybe sometime in future when the next campaign we run, again he rightly said that it's not the last campaign, it's the first campaign. So the next campaign will give me better results. So yes, those things help. And by the end of let's say, and yes, another thing in our case particularly is important, like which location we are targeting. So metros or non-metros, class B town, class 3 town. So especially when we talk about dating, I think initially metros were very important. Now things are changing a lot after internet becoming so penetrating even to the deeper of India's rural areas, so that the gap between the rural and urban is getting bridged, and people are on their own. People know what people want to experiment in their approach towards using the internet. So even the class B towns are going to give some good results. We believe that's a hypothesis we are having. So next experiment we are going to go with the tier 3 cities. So as small as Belgaum kind of city, Belgavi or Belgaum, whoever, whatever resonates. Belgavi, yeah. So that's the city we are planning. So okay, let's try something there. There the acquisition cost and CAC will become far lower because not many players are trying out there. Not many players are already there. So we can try. So those are the things we are trying. So at the moment, it's difficult for us to comment on the fact that what is sustainable and what is not. Maybe after a year we'll be in a better position. But yes, experiment is a constant thing. I think even after a year, if something works for us, doesn't mean it will continue to work for next 2 years as well. So the experiments will continue. Marketing means experiment, nothing else. As far as retention goes, I believe I think it's a kind of relationship with the users, and for any relationship, communication helps. If we are able to bridge the communication between us and the users through notifications or through any other channel, I think retention is easier. Especially for dating apps, I don't think people expect that they will get a result in a day or in a month or in 2 months. So they keep all the dating apps on their phone. They are okay to invest their real estate of phone for a dating app. So generally they do not delete the dating app. But yes, if we don't communicate with them, even if they are having a dating app, there's no notification going, they are not getting to know, okay, there's a new match or some chat has come from. So then slowly we'll lose the customer. So the key thing over here, we believe that if we are able to maintain a good communication with our users, I think retention is far easier.
Super, that's very elaborative and rightly put. And Siva, over to you. You were talking about retention and some of the examples from your conversations. So is that happening where that's becoming a focus? And do you see people looking at that approach to build a sustainable growth, etc.? If you could elaborate a little more on that.
Yeah, I think all the startups have become more smarter right now in terms of where they want to invest. I think rightly put, there's enough money in the bank right now, but how do they want to spend is something that everybody is looking at. One thing that we've started noticing is before even retention, customers are very picky and choosy in terms of where they want to start, identifying the right channels. What we've majorly started seeing is people are okay to work with multiple networks, but they are only willing to work with networks that they very much trust, right? That's one. Two, a lot of them have fallen back on the, I'll not say organic channels, but own media channels specifically. I think influencers is one channel that we're very much seeing that the amount of retention that they bring in is much higher. And it's not that everybody is going to the top tier influencer to get things done, but they're okay to go to a very small micro influencer because the crowd might not be higher, but they're okay with the pull that they have to the limited set of audience that they already have, right? That's one that we're seeing. Two, I was talking to a fintech brand and they actually grew to 150K users just through reference. And they're like, you know what, this is where my money is going to be, which is limited, but I still see a growth. And the users that come in from referrals, even though we are all tech savvy today, but when it comes to fintech specifically, I think we still kind of lend our ear to a friend saying that, "अच्छा ये app अच्छा है." Only then we are okay to kind of invest into a fintech app, a time or space on the phone, right? Uh, Also that we are seeing the trend in terms of a lot of them are making a journey from web to app. So I think once somebody makes a journey from web to app, their focus is अच्छा मेरा web campaign भी चल रहा है और app campaign also, but somehow they kind of miss the intersection between both of them. There are users who are also moving from here to app. That means these are those users who have already used you. They understand that this is where I have to be, and then they migrate to app. So until unless you don't recognize these users who are coming to app, which have already used your services in the past, this is where the focus has to be in terms of engagement. And I think a lot of startups in the heat of growth kind of also forget about there are a lot of users who are also leaving you in terms of uninstalls. Again, one more startup that we've been talking to, they're like, there is a decent uninstall rate that is happening for us. And I did ask them a question that they're into food tech. And did you ever notice that you're not serving in a particular area and then a user has uninstalled? Do you go back and look at these data points saying that how many of them have uninstalled because you're not serviceable? And now you're serviceable in that area, and how did you reach out to them again? Because these were those users who have invested time to come onto your app, look for service, and they were not able to get it. And how are you looking back at these users, right? And again, no prizes for guessing, but India is the second uh, largest country in terms of uninstall rates. I think the quicker the user comes onto your app, the faster they also leave. And 40 to 50% leave in 30 days. And out of this 40-50%, 70% leave in first 7 days. So where is your hook metric that you're looking at? So it's not all. I understand that the end goal is always revenue, but before that, there's always a hook metric where a customer would give you an idea saying, you know what, अगर मैं ये करूँगा, I will stay back more on your app than if I don't do this. So this is very important to identify what is that hook metric for every app, and this is where you optimize for. And once you get this thing done, obviously your retention will increase, and that will actually lead into your final revenue metric that is required.
Super amazing. And yeah, Satyajit, from your perspective, how do you think about driving sustainable growth? And then outside, we were also chatting about some of the activation and retention metrics that you have, which are literally through the roof. So maybe if you could talk a bit about those as well. How do you get to those numbers? How do you focus on those possibly?
Yeah, so I think let's break down what sustainability actually means, right? In this case, for me, it means two things. One is what is the long-term value that we can derive from a user, and over a period of time, the organic share of growth increases the paid share of growth. For me, that's where it starts moving into a sustainable direction. From both of these aspects, now when we look at engagement and retention, I think it puts that into perspective and tells you how important both of these things are, right? If you want long term value, the user has to be retained. So, where at the start, is there a clear definition between your different user groups, right? Who is a one time user for you? Who is a casual user, right? Who is just coming? So, it's a very flirtatious audience that just comes in, downloads, checks it out, and then leaves, right? Where we have such a high level of uninstalls in the first 7 days, that's a lot of your flirtatious audience, right? So, which is not something that you want to focus on. Who is your core user and who is your champion user, right? Your core user is someone like for Paytm, someone who just uses payments is a core user because that's the core offering. A champion user is probably someone who uses payments as well as pays utility bills, right? So uses about multiple features. Once the segmentation is very clear, and how deep can you actually segment is where your strategies for retention and everything will start coming in. When we, everyone keeps talking about the ability to want to upsell or cross sell products to a user that is a user of your core product, right? But do we really understand how that's going to happen? Or, that is something that is in everyone's long term plan, right? But are we really building the foundation for that to happen? I'll help you understand this with an example. For companies which have or apps which have very high number of sessions but very low session time per session, do not possess the ability to cross sell and upsell a product, right? So, say for Google Pay, whenever I open Google Pay, it's almost like muscle memory where I go, I scan, I pay, and I leave, right? So, if Google Pay today launches a new product which is down, right? Am I ever really going and scrolling or spending time? So while I might open Google Pay about 7 or 8 times in a day, right? The average session time per session is very low. So for that, the ability to cross sell or upsell any product to the core user is very low. So you might say that we have very high level of sessions and we will cross sell to this very engaged user base, but that ability does not really translate going forward. So which is why when you start looking at such metrics, then you start understanding how important your engagement and retention actually starts. So it starts from very clear identification of who your user base is, what are categorize them into at least these four categories, if not further segmentation, and then define the strategies for each group. The strategy that you have for someone who's transacted with you once to convert them into a core user to retain them further will be very different from your core user to be sold to for other features and to make them a champion user. So the further you can go down and segment these users will that's how effective it's going to be. And then that's where your when you start solving problems for a core user group, right, that is where that user group will go out and refer the app, and that is the only way your organic share of voice going forward in the long term will increase. But that investment into that has to start today, right? Because probably we're also in this phase of instant gratification where I cannot instantly see the result of that, which is why probably it does not become a focus area. So yeah, from that perspective, that's where your retention, for me at least, your retention and engagement actually piece into the sustainable growth module.
Super, that's quite insightful, Satyajit. And we'll just go back to the whole conversation and possibly try and summarize this. That we spoke about a bunch of topics like what's the macros like, how do you drive growth in these terms, how do you look at better retention rate, engagement rates, etc. So whole diverse bunch of topics. Now on a closing note, Saurabh, if you could, and you spoke, Saurabh, you spoke a lot about experimentation, etc. So maybe what are the top couple of experiments as well as focus areas for Meet 7 that you guys are looking for, say, next 6 to 12 months right now? If you could give us some insights on that, because there are a lot of topics and things that you could do, but what's the focus really right now?
Uh, as I just pointed out, like we are willing to experiment with the new markets, tier three or tier two, especially the student class. Students, I believe, are like the most innovative ones. They are free for any kind of exploration as far as app goes, and probably that's the reason the install rate is also high, because they keep experimenting, they keep exploring what are the better options, what are the new things in the market. So that's okay. Other thing, as far as our case is concerned, we are having some good features, we believe, of course, and we are yet not able to communicate to the market well. So that is another thing we need to work on. So that is where I believe like innovation comes in picture, like which channel we are choosing. Not necessarily all the time a traditional channel will work, and even if a traditional channel is there, some innovative way we need to think on, because otherwise nobody is going to spend so much time listening to me like you guys are doing. But in the market, people are not willing to do that, and so those are the two things I think we'll be doing in the next 6 to 12 months. We don't see much of the challenge with the acquisition, we don't see much of the challenge with the retention. I think it's more about adding value and creating value for the user. So that's the whole focus.
And Siva, in your conversations, what are the top one or two priorities that you've come across or heard of that people are really focusing on right now in these scenarios?
Uh, Again, I think I'll probably go on to the retention piece. I think this is something that we are hearing a lot more. But what we have started looking at is every brand is kind of having a different approach to this. I think this is a different priority. For example, when you talk to a very matured startup, they're like, we have done acquiring enough number of users. Right now, my focus is going to be how do I re-engage these users that have already spent money acquiring. If you talk to a large fintech brand or a traditional brand, their this thing is, you know what, we have been perceived as a company which is more for serious buyers and users. How do I acquire Gen Z? These are the guys who are going to make the next trend for me. So how do I make sure that I have dual identity where I serve my existing customers with a cash cow, but at the same time I acquire the new users which are there in the market. So that how do I do this? So I think for them it's becoming more of user experience which they did not had in the past, but they're focusing more towards that. And if you talk to a smaller startup which is just starting off, I think their focus is more on, you know what, I want to make sure that I acquire these users, but at the same time, I want to make sure that they're staying back with me. I think what Saurabh is also telling is if they're able to create the right value at the right time, I don't think the next part of retention becomes a challenge for them. And I think one very clear standout that we are also seeing is uh, I think this is a favorite thing that I've read online that as the app ecosystem kind of flourishes, app tourism will also increase. This is like you've got more tourists on your app, people will come and people will leave. So I think the biggest focus that's going to be is with the cash being strapped right now is how do I make sure that the people that I already have engage with me much more, and how do you find the right uh, timeline to do this, at the same time not overdo this, because again I think everybody talking about retention again and again, people forget that there has to be a positive delta, and startups have started realizing this now, that if a user is going to do something on their own, I still don't have to push them, but at the same time I want to push them when they're not going to do this. So how do they kind of get this intelligence? I think data is going to be the key going forward for the next 6 months. I think every startup is trying to fix their data pipelines now. Everything works in silos for people. There's an engagement tool, there's an attribution platform, there's a backend system, there's three other offline channels that you're working. How do you make sure that the data is talking to you right? If the startups or the growing startups are not going to fix this from day one, tomorrow you have a larger problem that you've got data, but you've got no learnings from it for the last 6 months or 1 year. I think this is going to be a priority that I've seen from a lot of startups.
Got it. And Satyajit, in your case with Deciml, what are the priorities? Are you looking to double down on the influencer which has worked well, or maybe try something new? And then from business perspective also, your top one or two things to focus on right now.
Yeah, so we will continue doing more influencer activity. That is something that worked well for us. Hopefully, continues delivering the same kind of results. Nothing guaranteed on that front. But I think the top priority for the next 12 months is for the segmentation of users to really understand who the core and champion users are, and increasing that user base without going out and saying, acquire users at any cost. One is because great that the ecosystem also concurs with that, and second is we don't have the money to be able to do that today. So I think all in all it fits well. But I think further segmentation of users and higher growth of users which bring us a long term value.
All right, super. Not to keep everyone waiting for long. So a bunch of interesting insights and takeaways for me, and I'm sure must be for the audience here as well. So thanks Saurabh, Siva, Satyajit for joining us.
WebEngage. Retention simplified.